when we're finally starting to get going again, if they strike for even a couple of weeks, they're talking about $1 billion a week in lost revenue. So throughout the last 3.5 years in the auto industry, we've seen lots of ebbs and flows when it comes to vehicle values. There was a peak in late 2021, early 2022, where the average price of a used car was up nearly 30%. And if you think that's an average, so there are some that didn't come up at all, or maybe even came back a little bit, and there were some that were way over 30, right? So you say 30%, it's a really high number. Over the last 6 to 10 months, inventory for a number of auto manufacturers have come back, especially Ford, Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram, and most Stellantis product. So much so that you're starting to see discounting again. You're seeing up to $10,000 off some Rams and $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 off some Grand Cherokees. A lot of things that are in the news right now is the UAW strikes and talking about expense and cost if the UAW stops building cars in the US. They've got some pretty high demands. They're looking to have their work week reduced from 40 hours per work week to 32. And I think they're looking for somewhere around a 30% jump in wages and a whole lot of other benefits that the UAW workers are working for. And they're really asking for this because profitability is up so much. So if you think about that, you go back to 2019, where the average price of a vehicle was about $37,000, and today it's nearing $50,000. Inflation has a lot to do with that. Electric vehicles have a lot to do with that. The cost to produce is a lot more. It's hard to get parts. Parts are more expensive. Labor is more expensive. But the UAW is still working with a contract from the mid-2000s. So they're all looking for a lot more money. And it's probably warranted. It's probably money that they deserve. However, the wide-ranging impact of how that will hurt the auto industry in a post-COVID world, we've already kind of seen what that looks like, right? So you have in early 2020 or mid to early 2020, these factories were shut down, or their suppliers were shut down, or the chip factories were shut down. And that really caused a problem with half-built cars or cars without computers or cars without seats just sitting in lots everywhere because they didn't have everything they needed. And now, 3.5 years later, most auto manufacturers still have not caught up. I spoke about how Ford and Stellantis have caught up, but they really decontented a lot of those vehicles. They don't have a lot of the options that they may have had before because they're trying to get the cars onto dealers' lots. For those of us that have grown up around cars for a long time, we knew Jeep, Dodge, Ram as Chrysler Automobile or Daimler Chrysler or FCA when it was Fiat Chrysler. A few years back, that same group formed Stellantis. So Stellantis is Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram, Fiat, Alfa Romeo, Maserati in the US. That is how it is known. So they're one of the manufacturers. So if you think about that, that's actually 7 or 8 manufacturers to go on strike. It's not just Jeep or Ram, it's 7 or 8. And while, Alfa Romeo and Maserati are lower volume, the dealer stocks of those are a lot smaller, and you kind of have to be restocked on those pretty regularly to be able to sell those cars from a new perspective. And of course, Ford is Ford and Lincoln, and General Motors is your GMC, Cadillac, Chevrolet, and still Buick. Buick's still out there too. In fact, Buick's doing very well with a number of their cars, so it would really hurt Buick, who's kind of on a resurgence. So. One that really hasn't come back is General Motors. I mean, it's still really hard to get a Yukon or a Chevy Suburban or even Corvettes. I mean, they're all these cars are still trading for over sticker, and our dealership lots don't have them, and most don't either. So the reason I bring that up is if you look back during COVID, how much 2 months of shutdown really hurt our business. You imagine when we're finally starting to get going again, if they strike for even a couple of weeks, they're talking about $1 billion a week in lost revenue for the auto manufacturers, the big three, and almost $1 billion of salary per week that are not going to be paid to the workers. As an auto dealer or a part of a large dealer group, we definitely have some concern about General Motors, for example. They're already still far behind getting us the inventory and the allocation that we need. There's actually some good part of this on the Ford and Stellantis side of things, where right now the market day supply for a CJDR product is around 90 days. So market day supply means how long it actually takes to sell, right? So it's around 90 days for a new Jeep or a new Ram. For a new F-150, it's around 75, 80 days. During the pandemic, the average market day supply of a new vehicle was about 12 days. So if you think about how much inventory has caught up for the US auto manufacturers, it's come back a long way. The plants being shut down for a few weeks might actually allow some time for those vehicles to catch up. But my concern really comes to, people that have ordered vehicles that may go to a different OEM. If you ordered a new GMC Yukon, maybe you go to a Nissan Armada or a Infiniti QX80 or something like that, because those are available. I think we're going to see a really big gap here again in auto production, and I think we're going to see prices start to rise. And you're actually starting to see that at the auction over the last couple weeks. Vehicles that we've seen slide, 10, 15, 20% over the last 6 to 8 months, we're back up 5, 6% over the last 2 weeks, especially that late model Stellantis product, the 21, 2022 Rams and Jeeps, that they were just sliding pretty drastically on the used side. And we've seen prices up over the last couple of weeks. So that's something that we are really concerned about as an auto industry. And we, of course, urge the auto manufacturers to, come up with an agreement with the UAW, because it could be a big problem overall. Some people have asked the question, is it really just Ford or Stellantis or General Motors? There are other auto manufacturers that build cars in the United States, like BMW builds cars in the Carolinas, Nissan builds cars in Tennessee, and so on and so forth. They're under a contract, a different negotiation. The way the UAW works with the big three is because they're all basically Michigan-based. They're on their own program. The other big piece of this is parts availability. For our manufacturers that we are concerned being on strike, we've bought a ton of parts. We bought about 90 days worth of parts, of the usual stuff, whether it be brake rotors or brake pads, or of course, oil filters, engine oil you can get from anywhere. That's not a problem. But we're concerned. Throughout the pandemic, obviously the profitability for the auto manufacturers was quite high. What they realized is, well, we don't have to put $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 on the hood of these cars to move them. We don't have to subvent interest rates. We don't have to come up with crazy low leases to move these cars off the lot. And a lot of them realize, and still your Hondas, your Toyotas, and your Hyundais of the world, they're producing as many as people need. They are not overproducing, because they realize, hey, we're actually more profitable this way. Ford and Stellantis are still in a volume race really against each other, and it kind of comes down to Ram 1500 versus Ford F-150 or Ford F-Series in general. Ford for 70 some odd years has been the leader in truck sales. So of course they want to continue to be able to promote that narrative. So they're trying to keep up with what Stellantis is doing, where GMC and Chevrolet have said, that's okay. We're actually happy with the profits that we're seeing. We're not going to overproduce to get there from a volume standpoint. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with this strike over this next week, because it's going to hurt suppliers. It's going to hurt Michigan and its surrounding states that support the automotive industry. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be unemployed and affected by this. And that, again, trickles down to dealership networks, whether it be parts departments, service departments, sales departments. If we have another vehicle shortage like we did a few years ago, so soon, but with interest rates where they are, right, and with cash being as tight as it is, and lenders being as tight as they are, really concerned about what the rest of this year looks like for not only auto dealers, but the entire automotive industry.
If you're ready for your next adventure, you're gonna need the right car, and the best way to buy your next car is with the help of Premier Financial Services. The Simple Lease from Premier Financial is the most powerful tool in the world of exotic car financing. You get all the benefits of a traditional loan, like the ability to accumulate equity, pay it off at any time, and they give you a perfectly easy to understand amortization table, but you also get the benefits of a lease, the low payment, the flexible terms, the low down payments, but also you get to use some certain tax benefits that leases entitle you to. They've taken great care of me, and I know they'll take great care of you, so check them out now at the link in the description below.